So I was 17. My father had been in and out of the hospital with some illness. Didn't think it was as bad as we as it came to be.
You thought it was kind of gastrointestinal kind of
Yeah.
things, and
Um, didn't really realize that it was something with the heart, even though that's in my history. But the night of June 8th, 1976, we got a call at 2:30 in the morning, and my mom answered the phone and she said, "We'll be right there." And she woke me up. She called my brother who lived right up the street from us. He grabbed his car and we drove to St. John's Hospital in St. Louis. When we got there, everything was still okay. He was having, so they were doing a lot of work with him to try, just to make sure things were going well. And so we stayed at the hospital. Um, and like I said, it was a up and down day. They'd come in one day and say, he's doing great. He's coming around. Um, Apparently he had some minor heart attacks at the hospital when they called. And then we also found out that they started to realize that he had had some heart attacks at home, more like TIAs, the minor stuff.
TIAs are mini strokes, but
Well, that's true. But anyway, he said so. But like I say, we went back and forth, and about 1 o'clock that afternoon, we were able to. They asked to come into his room and just wanted us to be able to talk with him, say whatever we could. And while we were talking to him, and it was tough too because he was getting ready for surgery, similar to the surgery that I had, the open heart surgery, which back in 76 they didn't have the same technology they do nowadays, but they were prepping him for that. And he literally had this, what do they call this scope that they put down your throat to when you're going through surgery.
he was intubated.
Is that what? Yeah.
He had
And so
tube down his
when
throat.
he when we tried to talk with him, he had to try to talk through that. And the last thing he said to me was, "I love you." And then they rushed us out of the room and we got pushed into like a waiting room. And then they came back about 20 minutes later and said that he had passed and there was nothing more they could do for him. And we had the opportunity as a family to go into the room after they cleaned everything up and they just had him laying there with a blanket or a towel or something over him. And it was really wild about it is he looked like he was sleeping. I
Mm.
mean, he had the same expression that he had when he was sleeping. So it was it was kind of a sudden situation for us, and coming out of that, it took a lot to get past that. Many times, a lot of grief that we held for a long time, um, and that's kind of what we're talking about today.
So, hello, this is Gina
And this is Don.
with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 237. And today we're going to talk about grief, what characteristics, and how to get past it. So, we're going to be talking about all aspects of grief. But before we get into that, we need to lighten the mood a little.
Yeah.
And I've got some fun jokes I found. Okay. My grief counselor died last week. He was so good at his job that I don't even care. I hate going to funerals because I'm not a mourning person. The man who invented throat lozenges died last week. There was no coffin at his funeral.
That one took a little longer for me to figure out.
And the last one, before I die, I plan to eat a whole bag of unpopped popcorn to make my cremation more interesting. I knew you'd like that one.
It was good. It was good.
So, laughter's the best medicine, right? Talking about a super serious topic here, but
Well,
grief, and it looks different, and there's different forms of it, and it's not always because someone died.
well, yeah. I want before we get kind of instead of a tip, but it is kind of a tip in a way. It's this poem I've read multiple times myself. It's called "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep." Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am a thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in the snow. I am the sunlight on the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circle flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
I love that poem, and it made me think of, so my father passed 2023. Um, he had advanced Parkinson's and dementia and kind of come to a really low quality of life to the point where he was really ready to let go. And, he was 83 years old, and it was still difficult to say goodbye, but very different experience than like you shared, Don. And he was cremated. Would have been fun to have eaten popcorn kernels. Um, and my parents had purchased a, what do they call it? It's not a mausoleum. There's a name for it. Columbarium. So it's a place where you store your ashes. So they're Catholic. So this was at a Catholic church, but they used to live south of Charlotte. So that they had everything set up, even though they had moved up with us north of Charlotte. So we had a service here locally, and then we drove down. My brother was in town with his girlfriend, and my sister, she drove separately, but we all drove down to the church with my mom and my dad's ashes. And we had just a little private moments together at the site where his ashes went into this little box. My mom said that they had picked out the place together because from the box you could see the little pond that was there. My dad always liked a view with the water. So we're standing there and reminiscing a little bit, and my sister, I think, hears a hawk flying overhead. And so my dad loved hawks. He loved birds, he loved eagles, all kinds of stuff. And so me and my brother were going chasing up the hill, because we felt a very his presence, you know, do not stand at my grave and weep, I'm not there. And just there's just a connection with my dad and birds, and especially hawks and eagles. So I just thought about that as you were reading that, and just those connections we might feel with those who have gone before us. And I went through grief with him dying. It was very, we knew it was coming. Um, and it doesn't mean that there still wasn't grief, over the loss.
What was really interesting was in high school, at the time, I was in between, I was going to my senior year of high school. And one of the classes I signed up was I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it was about the loss of someone and grievance and all. And we went through the
You signed up for this before your father passed?
I don't know because
You
I
took it
don't
your
think
senior year?
it was my senior.
Okay.
We didn't. I don't think we. That's a good question. I think we signed up in the middle of summer for classes for the next year. But yeah, we went through the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book, The Stages of Grief, and it was really good because I went through a lot of them, all different, and they don't run in any certain, like I said, it's not linear.
Yeah,
It
they describe the stages, but it doesn't mean it happens in that order.
Yeah, because there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Um, I don't know if I ever went through the bargaining. I'm not sure if I ever pleaded for dad to come back. I probably did now that I think about it, um, but yeah, and I'll put that name of the book up on on the website when we
Sure. I mean, she's
finish.
well known. It's been around a long time, but um, yeah. So grief.
Well, and there, you're talking about with different types of grief that we deal with. It's not all about death.
Yes.
Um, I was reading, uh, I was looking this up beforehand. Um, the loss of friends, family, a member, like we said, just talked about, but marriage, friendship, things like that, we can grieve over a loss of that. Your home, your neighborhood, or community, the things you've built, um, job. When you lose job, I work with a lot of that. Financial stability, dream or goal, something you dreamed of that you never were able to achieve. Good health, um, your youth. I like that one. I think I still grieve that one a lot. And the last one they said was fertility.
Yeah. I mean, people are dealing with fertility. Um, and it didn't say it exactly, but someone's illness, it's not your own, um, but a change in someone's medical condition and status. Everything happened so quickly with your father.
Yeah.
Um, my dad was diagnosed at the age of 74 with Parkinson's. No, 64. And I was surprised he was diagnosed. He had a slight tremor in his hand. Um, and I, as an occupational therapist and working in long-term care and rehab, I knew what the end stage of that could look like. And this was back, what, 20 plus years ago. And I had worked with some people, the end stages of Parkinson's, and most of them were bedbound, arms or legs contracted, not moving very well, not able to, um, usually not able to feed themselves. And so when he got this diagnosis, it was like, wow, it just was, felt very heavy to me. Um, and obviously it was different for other people in the family and my mom and my dad and what they, how they interpreted and saw this. Um, the interesting side is that he was not bedbound. He maybe his last 2 days of life, possibly three, he was in bed. Prior to that, he was still up and moving around,
Hmm.
still feeding himself. You definitely saw a decline um, for a couple days, and then the last time we helped him get up from his chair, he needed help, like a lot of physical help, whereas before he was pretty much doing it himself. So despite that long time with Parkinson's, yes, he did have a decline over the years and challenges, but it didn't exactly look, like other people I had seen with it. Um,
Well, that's interesting because the other thing was, and I have to look at where I got this information, but they talk about um, the types. Well, let's see what grief really is. And first one says grief is individual as the relationship which we shared with a loved one. So there's no one size that fits all to it, which we just kind of just talked about right there.
mhm,
Grief may manifest itself in one body through a multitude of ways. May cause physical pain, stomach aches, pains like that. Uh, People can stop eating or drinking. They may turn inward. So, emotional. I love this one. Emotional. Um, oh, I've written emotional. Oh, the emotional bury often comes later than the physical burial
mhm,
when you're finally able to say, yes, he's gone. You know, um, um, denial works until it doesn't, is what it said. And then it said, following a loss, we undergo a series of first over the next year.
mhm.
The first holidays, the first project that somebody's done, the first whatever, you
First
know.
Father's Day without your
Yeah,
father living.
yeah. Oh, that was tough. Because what was tough about it was this, it was June 8th. 2 weeks later was Father's Day.
Oh,
and that was really tough. I mean, my father and I weren't the closest,
Well, you
but
were 17 years old.
yeah, well,
Are you
yeah, I
are
was,
you close with our 17-year-old daughter?
yeah, no, that and that's that, that's where regrets came in later, just, I wish I had done this or that, but I, yeah, I was, but still it was a loss. And, I can still, I remember sitting in a chair and thinking this was a chair my dad sat in a lot, and that kind of thing. Um,
And just to double back, um, I worked with Jan Luther bef before and while she was writing her book, Grief is Mourning Sickness. And we talked about anticipatory grief, which is a lot what I was going through with my father got that diagnosis, the knowing what could happen,
mhm.
what's to come when you have, whether someone's diagnosed with cancer or even any kind of dementia or other illnesses, that anticipation of what has yet to come. Um, I wanted to touch on. So Don was 52 when he had his first heart attack. And Don doesn't have a small heart attack where he drives himself to the hospital, like I've been told by other people. He went into full cardiac arrest. And at the time, our children were 2, 9, and 12. No, 13. Gotta do my math right. 2, 9, and 13. So we had very young children. Um, and it was scary. And the medics had got there right before he went into cardiac arrest. And I do remember taking my children to sit on the steps and we started tapping. We had been doing a lot of tapping at that time. One of our kids was dealing with, severe anxiety and we're using tapping a lot. And I remember doing that. Um, so he got to the hospital, he got stents put in, he survived the event. And he spent quite a bit of time in the hospital. I remember having talks, with a social worker and realizing how traumatic this was for the kids. And I remember, like, what resources do we have for the kids? And it's like, there was no support when your father survives a
That's
heart
true.
attack. And I just knew that the dramatic effect this is going to have on them. I mean, our youngest was 2 years old, um, and yet there was nothing in place for that. There's different support groups when you lose a child or, a loved one, and there's these different support groups, but there's this whole other level of grief. Life is forever different. You think about
Mhm.
changing a job, moving, all those kinds of things. There's a big change in the way your life is. And so there's a grief. There's a little bit of mourning of what was. We moved a couple years ago, and there was a little bit of a sadness. We had raised our kids at this other house. We had lived there for 22 and a half years. And, I remember the feeling sort of a sadness. Of leaving that place and that kind of thing. And yet we bought this big, beautiful house. We paid off some debt. As exciting as it was, there was still that other side. But I'm kind of jumping around here, but just
That's
wanting to speak to that, when someone's struggling in the hospital and dealing with things, you're still dealing with everything. They're still alive, and there's this grief, but yet you have things to take care of. I had to make sure my kids were taken care of, and things got done, and they got to their activities and getting to the hospital every day. And um,
yeah.
there's a whole nother layer of stuff going on, and it can build up over time. And you came home, you had home health care for a while because you needed to build up before you could do cardiac rehab. And it wasn't until midsummer that you did cardiac rehab, and you were just gotten out of that. It was early fall, 6 months from the time of your heart attack, and I came down with bronchitis that I just couldn't shake. I It just kept flaring back up on me again for months, and we carry grief in our lungs, and just that physical effect. It took its toll on me, and then I had to take care of my own health and care for myself. Um, so, and I remember feeling guilty because somehow I had another friend who lost her husband about the same time. In fact, I went to his funeral service, and this is like 2 months after your heart attack. And I was sobbing. It hit so close to home. This could have been me. Um, but that feeling of, we had another friend that we reached out to and her husband had died of a heart attack. She came home and, he was
Yeah, I was just
non-responsive.
thinking that too because I
Um,
felt guilty about that because I called them and
to fill her in on what happened with
hmm
you, and she shared that, and so there's this feeling of, well, my husband lived, I should be grateful, um, but yet there's still a whole level of grief there, and then a loss of, our relationship changed. um, I became your caregiver for a while, and so grief can look very differently and in different ways. I just want people to think about it in more than just death. um,
yeah.
um, that there's other elements that go on. Um, a kid has a best friend and they move away. I mean, that's very traumatic on a child and or anyone, someone moves away and you're not able to be in touch with them. It changes your life, the way that you're used to living it.
Well, and as I think back on that day in the hospital, and I think about, I was looking at the different
Which
type.
day in the hospital? Oh, with your
I'm
dad.
sorry, when my dad, yeah.
The day with your
Well, I
dad.
was thinking, and I'm looking at the types of grief. I wrote them down here,
Hmm.
and the second one is abbreviated grief. That it's short, and I think that's something that we put on as a society that grief has to be. You got a month or two, and you better be ready to
Right.
go after that kind of thing. But then there's the delayed grief, and that was my mom. She well she told this lady, she said, I was holding up for you guys. I want, but she held off quite a while before she ever broke down or anything, because of us as kids. Um, Cumulative grief, that was my brother Bob. Oh my God, he stayed solid up to a certain point and then just totally lost it. Just, I mean, shivering kind of that bad,
Breakdown and crying. Yeah, because it builds up in you.
and then there's inhibitive grief, and that's kind of where we don't share it at all. We don't really let it out, which is very painful and very, I think that's where a lot of the patients I see.
Well, it can manifest in your body, like
Yeah,
me with the bronchitis, and it finds its way out if you're not emotionally releasing
yeah.
and allowing yourself to process those feelings, and you're trying to stuff it down. It builds up in our bodies. I tell our kids all the time, Don's of German descent and known for stoic Germans who don't share feelings. And I'm of Italian descent and we're loud and expressive. And I tell them, be an Italian, not a German, let your feelings out. Because Don's got a long history of heart disease and amongst him and his ancestors.
Yeah.
And I don't have that in my background in history, but just, yeah, the importance of letting feelings out. I know when my father passed, it had been a long process. We moved him closer to us. So his last June through October of his last months, he was nearby. We saw him pretty much daily. And we spent the day. He was living in assisted living at the time, um, and he passed. And um, the hospice people helped clean him up and took care of all that. And everybody went on their way, and I had driven there separately by myself. And I felt like I could not leave until I saw, I guess it was the um, funeral homes, whatever, take him out of this facility. And I sat in the parking lot and I was just crying. And I waited, and I can still picture them wheeling out his body on a stretcher and putting it in the
Oh.
vehicle. And I'm just like, shoot, I got to drive home. Luckily, it wasn't a long drive. And it was tough. It was tough. We knew this was coming. I knew this was going to happen, but it was really tough. Because I remember I came home and there were people at our house and things, and you came out I don't know if I asked you to step outside with me, and I just sobbed. I'm just like, my daddy's gone, and it just hit me really hard in that moment. Um, I,
That I'm sorry, I didn't want to
it's
finish.
okay. Go ahead.
Well, I remember when my at my dad's funeral, it was a quite a tribute to him because we had um not only we had the room we were in with his coffin, they had so many people they had to open up another room. So there was this, so many warm hearts and all that going on. But at the very end, everybody had left except for the family. And I actually turned and I watched them close the casket and I fainted. I've just, it was, it was kind of like when you saw him there, even in the coffin, there was just something about the presence of it. And then when they closed it, it was hard. That was really tough. They had to kind of carry me out to the car.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. When you said that, I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation with it, but it just brought up that same memory for me.
Mm-hmm.
That minute when it kind of hits you that
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, I was kind of relieved that my father was cremated because I've been to many funerals of other family members and, seeing the body and um, but realizing they're not really there anymore,
yeah.
and it adds a whole nother level of grief, I think. I mean, I got to see him
Mm,
after he passed, he was quietly laying there in the bed and
yeah.
um so it felt like it closed that if you get embalmed and go through all that, I don't know. To me, it just kind of gives you maybe a false hope. Like you said, he was there
Uh-huh.
in the coffin, you could see him, and then they closed that lid, and
Yeah, the tough part though with my mom though, I hadn't seen her before. I mean, I had been out there a couple of month or so
oh, when
beforehand,
your mom passed,
but I
yeah,
didn't get to see her
right
when it actually
before,
happened. So it was kind of that
you
that
kind of
situation. It was kind of
appreciated having, yeah,
yeah. It was.
the viewing and
I
all
mean,
of
yeah,
that.
it's still tough when they close it still, but that I think I
Yeah.
needed to see that in a way.
And grief is different for all people. We all experience it in different ways, and there's no one right way to experience it. And allowing people the space and the time. My mom recently told me, I think it was her aunt or great aunt had lost their husband and was wearing black. And apparently, this is a very Italian tradition. It's like a year later, and she's still wearing black. And my mom took her to buy a dress because my mom was getting married and she didn't want her, she would have come into the wedding in black. And so she took her out to buy a dress because that was apparently the old tradition. They would literally start wearing black and continue to wear black forever. But thinking about customs and traditions, and I know the Jewish faith has some really interesting customs and traditions. Uh, I've heard people talk about it, um, and I think it's helpful to have um, rituals or whatever. We had a service for my dad, and then we were looking at where we were going to host afterwards. And the church normally gave a space, but they couldn't on that date because there was something else going on. And there were a couple different things that didn't happen. And I'm like, my dad never got to see my new house. We'd moved here. I'd never got to bring him to
Yeah.
see my house. And when we had moved into our other house back in Charlotte, he helped us. He with his woodworking ability, he put trim on the baseboard where there wasn't, and did all kinds of things for us. And so I just like, I'd love to have everyone come to the house, and it just feel that sense of my dad being here. Um, and it wasn't because he died in North Carolina and his family is in New Jersey, and my mom's family is scattered about the country, and friends are pretty much many of them back in New Jersey. And that there was a very small gathering of people, um, but that the powerfulness of being at our house and
Yeah, that was good.
having food there and people, I had some aunts and uncles there, a couple cousins, um, and it just, yeah, it kind of felt good to have that memory right here in the home. And I know you were asking, are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, you know what? This is for me.
Yeah, yeah.
This is for me. And yeah, it's kind of nice to have that and that memory of things.
Well, when I'm talking this, I've had a couple of, more than just one client that talks about grief and somebody losing somebody, and all. And what I really try to work with is, um, initially grief has pain with it, has some, something going on for it. And what I always try to move towards at some point is going from grief with pain to grief with sadness. Because I don't think you ever give up grief. I think that it's always
There's always a little bit of that sadness that
sadness, yeah, that
um,
stays with you. I would love to I'd love to see my dad again. I think it'd be great to, you know, but and so there's some sadness with not being able to have him
well, you were
around kind of thing.
17 years old.
Yeah,
I was very young and hadn't met you and was living in a totally different state. So I never had a father-in-law,
yeah.
and never having the opportunity to have met him. Um, yeah, and for me, there's a sadness there that, I never had that opportunity to meet him. I've only heard stories and seen pictures and that kind of thing, and gotten to know your other relatives and his brothers and sisters and things, which I guess gave me a little part of that experience. Um, I know how heavy we want to get, but after my dad passed away, it was October 8th, 2023. Um, we took care of things. It was, those days after, my sister was in town, my brother was here and his girlfriend, and it was very bonding with hanging out with my mom. We went to make arrangements and spent time together, and it was really powerful having that connection time.
Wasn't it the 2024?
Yes, it was 2024.
I was gonna say because my heart attack was right after that.
I'm skipping
That's
years.
okay.
Um,
Sorry.
and his service we had on Monday, the 14th of October, and my birthday was on the 15th. And so I asked that we not drive the ashes on my birthday. So my brother stayed an extra day, and we did that on the 16th, and drove them down to South Carolina and took care of all that. And so then everybody went home from there. And then, was it that night? Our daughter was in a car accident. Someone smashed into her from behind. Because I think I wound up driving out. She works like 40 miles away, to meet her. And so she was achy and sore from being hit. So she spent the next day at home. I don't know if I'm messing days together.
And I think it was me that went out there. So I remember seeing the car parked in that Walgreens or whatever it was, that or Aldi's.
Anyways, it was me. I was there,
Oh, okay. Well,
um, but on um, Friday,
the 18th.
the 18th, I was getting ready for work, and you told me you felt funny, and you even initiated that you felt like you needed to call 911. And so I'm like, okay, you did that. And I'm like, let me just go warn the kids that the ambulance is coming. I walk up the stairs to tell our daughters who live at home. And when I came back down, you were in cardiac arrest on the bed. And I had to call 911 back. And it was quite an experience to go through that. When we got to the hospital, there was a chaplain that met and was talking with me. And looking back on it, I was like, they were there because we didn't know if you were going to live. um, and And so I was thrown into this, right? My brother had been down, my sister had been down with my father's illness and his service. And now here I am, everyone's gone. And I remember the blessing that Abby was home because she was sore from her accident. Turned out to be a blessing that she was around. And yeah, so it created a whole nother level of chaos and grief. And never really, I think I had one day at home to kind of, after everything with my dad, to kind of, sit with that. And so it took a while to get through, compounded grief there of a whole lot. And yet it's amazing that you're still here. Um, I performed CPR on you, and I'm pretty sure I did it all wrong, despite my
But I
30
think
plus
it's why I'm
years
here.
of taking
I think you
um,
did. And
CPR classes. And um, yeah, so there are different layers of things, right? Then it was like I had to jump and take care of that things just kind of moved on. And one of my siblings told me, they just spent a whole week and they just took time to grieve, for dad. And I was like, yeah, I'm busy with the husband in the hospital.
yeah, no.
And um, yeah, so it kind of took longer to process and get through all of that. And so grief, where are those jokes when you need them? Um, and what can we do? How do we process through these things? Well,
Abby, that's one of them.
it is, and it's a powerful tool. Um,
Well, you did it with my first one, with the kids
yeah,
especially, and that made a big difference.
managing our feelings and um,
Well, and I think the big thought is really allowing yourself to grieve too. If it goes to that point where you lose somebody, is to be able to allow yourself to
even if you
go through
don't
the
lose
process.
somebody, you can
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
letting those feelings out and finding a
anything.
safe space, maybe writing in a journal, figuring out what it is you need. Do you want to be alone or do you want someone with you? And maybe you try one out and go, wait, no, I don't want to be alone. This is even more painful. Finding, what's comforting to you. And it's going to change. One minute you might want quiet and to be alone, and the next you might just distraction. You want to be out and um, just busy with activities and things. And, but do you have healthy coping strategies? Do you have, it's okay to indulge in some sweets, and yet is this going to become a problem? Drinking, coping in other ways with medications that can lead to addiction. Do you have some healthy strategies incorporated in there? And can you incorporate a little bit of exercise? Just how much that helps our brain to process things. How important it is to get moving. When you were in the hospital, I did a lot of walking because I'd walk in from the parking garage to the hospital. And, I think back in the times you were in the hospital and my dad was in the hospital, just getting that walking in. One of our kids was in the hospital for a while for mental health issues, and I would walk around the outside of the hospital before going home just to get some exercise. And it's like you had to burn all this frustration and all those
Mm.
feelings. So finding a way to incorporate some movement, it helps us move through different stages of things. So,
Well, thank you for being part of our podcast today. You know, if today's conversation intrigued you and you want to leave a comment, we would love to hear your comments. So, where you want this to lead to. Is there more to it? Make sure to just subscribe in whatever means that you're listening to this. If stress, panic, and overwhelm are becoming part of your daily routine, consider my EFT discovery series. A lot of times they talk about EFT and they talk about it's really weird. But once they get through it and they see what it can do for you, a lot of times they come out and go, wow, what did it really helped me a lot. So, um, for wellness tips and for caregiving resources and more episodes, visit our website at focushealthyfamily.com or our podcast at focushealthyfamilypodcast.com. Make sure you can connect with us on Facebook at Focus Healthy Family. Instagram at Focus Healthy One, and at YouTube at Focus Healthy Family. Yeah, there's new episodes coming out every Thursday. And also check into what the conversations we've had, the people we've interviewed that talk about this uh, growing older, this aging thing that we go through. Um, and if your group, whether it might be a caregiving group or organization or health, community group, I would love to be able to come and speak to you. Um, I can give you some practical ways of being able to reduce stress. So if you want that kind of talk, make sure to check out our website and um, sign up to have a I get the rest
Sign
of
up
it
for
up.
a presentation or a
Presentation.
workshop.
There you go. Thank you. So, and remember, how you speak to your loved ones and your children today shapes their future and yours. I know.